So I've been playing a little bit of Elden Ring lately, and I've beaten it 3 times now. I think I've put enough time into it that I feel comfortable talking about it. Elden Ring is an open-world fantasy RPG where you have no maidens. Set in a world that is broken by the shattering of the Elden Ring, factions struggle for power using pieces of the ring, and you are tasked with uniting the pieces to become Elden Lord. How you go about this is entirely up to you. This is Fromsoftware's first attempt at an open-world game, and I can say in my humble opinion that they absolutely nailed it. The open world feels big in scale without being completely empty, and this is achieved because it is a condensed map crammed with goodies. This game is also a lot more approachable for any person because of the open world. Instead of slamming your head against the wall, trying to beat a boss for an hour, you could turn around and go on a journey somewhere else. Explore a cave, ruins, dive into a bite-sized dungeon, find a useful item or ability, upgrade your weapon, use the runes you found along the way to level your character up, find seeds or chalices to get more healing items and make them more effective. After doing all that, you can go back to the boss you struggled with, and in a way, you're choosing your own difficulty based on the amount of exploration you've done. This gameplay loop coupled with the world and the story is what makes this game so enjoyable, and one of the most immersive games Fromsoftware has ever made. The core of gameplay hasn't changed much in terms of their highly refined Dark Souls formula of methodical combat. This has been so refined over the years, and it feels at its best in this title. There are 3 major things that they add to the Souls formula that freshen up the game. 1 is obviously the open world, 2 are spirits that fight alongside you, and 3 is horseback combat and traversal of the open world. At the beginning of the game, you start out with a small portion of the map, and you have to explore and find other pieces of the map in the foggy areas. I think that this is a great way to slowly uncover the world, and it's a good way to not overwhelm the player with a massive open world. If you want a huge map, you have to fill it out and find pieces of the map in each area. In the starting areas of the open world, they give good indication on the points of interest on the map without beating you over the head with them. But once you set off on a journey towards the eastern and northern part of the world, the points of interest on the map will become a little bit more vague, and it will be up to you to make your own adventure. One thing that I always wanted Fromsoftware to do was have your starting class start wherever they were actually from. Take the sorcerer from Dark Souls, for example. If you're a sorcerer in that world, they studied at the School of Vinheim. You never get to go there in-game, it's only mentioned through item descriptions and NPC dialogue. It's also the same for the land of where miracles came from in Dark Souls as well. In Elden Ring, these places where the spells and items come from are actually in-game and you can go to them. I feel like that gives the world a greater level of depth and flavor that previous titles just didn't have. Very early on in the game, you'll get Torrent, your horse. This little guy is your means of travel across the world, and also your means of horseback combat. The horseback combat is very basic, but it's very enjoyable once you get the timing down. It can also give another dimension to boss fights just because of the added mobility of the horse. You have the extra option of dodging by double jumping, along with its quick dash. So fighting on horseback can essentially just speed up combat by giving you that vertical option of dodging with the jump, and by taking quick pot shots on bosses and enemies. I guess it wouldn't be much of a Fromsoftware game if they didn't really give you agency over how you can get to a later area. The developers have created multiple ways of getting to multiple different locations, whether that be via a little warp point, a secret wall, fighting a somewhat challenging boss, or a secret enemy that can warp you to a different zone, and even giving you the path of least resistance where you can just take a nice little elevator ride up to where you want to go. In a sense, I think they captured a similar type of level design that has been absent in most of their games since the original Dark Souls, where it's very vertical and has layers that just like weave in and out of different areas. And because there are so many ways and paths to get to the same place, this can give a player's playthrough of the game a very unique identity when you compare it to another player that had gotten to the same place but by a completely different means. So it really makes it feel like your own journey. And it also really sells you on the scale of the world. This might be a weird tangent, but it still pertains to the open world. The new way that they implemented memory slots into this game is one of my favorite changes, and I guess it's worth talking about. Memory slots are what you can use to memorize spells in the game so that you may cast them. And in previous titles, you had to level this stat every 2 levels for a single slot, and that was the stat's only purpose. In Elden Ring, memory slots for magic aren't tied to a stat anymore. You just go out, you find these mage towers, and you solve a puzzle or riddle, and you get an item at the top of the tower that gives you a memory slot. This is the best possible thing I think they could have done with this, because I hated leveling a hyper-specific stat that only increased a slot every 2 levels with no other added benefit. This wasn't only a great quality of life update, but they also integrated it into the open world in such a simple but fun way. A new addition to this game is spirits. You'll find spirits through exploration of crypts and the open world. These are extremely helpful with the dense amount of enemies throughout the game. Admittedly, I didn't use them because my almonds weren't activating on all cylinders, and I didn't realize that this tombstone symbol on the left-hand side meant that you could summon them. But on my second playthrough, I used them a lot, and man, they are pretty busted in some fights. If you're having trouble with an enemy type, or maybe you're stuck at a boss, these are like a must upgrade for you.
I'm joking! Stop!
If I could attribute this to something from a previous game, I think back to Dark Souls 1 where you would summon Tarkus and you would watch him solo the Iron Giant. That's basically what spirits feel like whenever you summon them. They just absolutely wreck. Elden Ring has a huge variety of weapons at your disposal, to the point where it could be overwhelming and you might change up your weapon 2 or 3 times throughout your playthrough. And I feel like in Elden Ring, it seems more encouraged to play around with a bunch of different weapon types because they give you a lot of smithing stones. And if you are going out of your way to find the smithing stone caves, you will be rewarded with a ball bearing eventually that you can take to the round table and give to a merchant that will then just outright sell you smithing shards for runes. And this will just further open up the possibilities of different builds and different weapons that you might want to use. There's also weapon abilities that you can find out in the open world that you can slot into different weapons. This can give your weapon versatility in its moveset and also in some cases giving it some sort of elemental infusion. This does a very good job of letting the player experiment with different things, and it also doesn't punish the player by investing too early into something that they change their mind on. And speaking of changing your mind on something, you might get to a point in the game where you have built your character a certain way, but you found spells or weapons that speak to you a lot more, and you wish that you could respec your character. The system does exist, and to unlock it, you do have to defeat a boss. Luckily, the boss is early enough in the game and easy enough to beat that you don't feel too set back by the time that you find her. The resource that you do consume to respec your character is a lot more prevalent in the game than in something like Dark Souls 3, where you could find a lot of the material, but you can only respec your character a total of 3 times per playthrough. In Elden Ring, you'll find this resource out and about in the open world quite often. And they put no cap on how many times you can respec your character, which will allow you to experiment with a bunch of different builds very early on in the game with low risk. There's something like over 80 unique bosses in Elden Ring, and that's not even including the NPC invasions. So it goes without saying that there's a staggering variety of things to fight in this game. I will say that there are bosses that become regular enemies later in the game, but that doesn't make them unenjoyable to fight again. It's only unenjoyable when they throw just 2 of the same enemy at you in a boss arena, because it's not necessarily like balanced around one's faster, one's slower. They have the same sort of moveset, so if they dogpile you, you can just get overwhelmed and completely destroyed quickly. But I feel like those types of encounters are few and far between, and the bosses are just absolutely exceptional, especially like the mainline ones, the demigod ones. They're amazing. One, for example, that is just my absolute favorite is Radahn. The first part of the fight is just making the run up to him, and while you're running up to him, you're summoning other phantoms into the world to help you defeat him. And while doing all of that, you're also dodging the volleys of arrows that he's just sending at you while you're running up. So making the run up to the boss is part of the fun of the fight. And then once you get up close, he pulls out his melee weapons, and you soon find out how agile he is on his horse while flinging magic at you and melee attacks. Later on, when you get him to half health, he'll jump into the sky and the music will just stop. And then you're just like looking for him. Once you look up into the sky long enough, though, you'll see a fireball that's just like getting bigger and bigger, like some sort of meteorite coming down to the earth. And you'll realize it's Radon because the music slowly comes back in as he's crashing down on you. And that's just one of the major bosses in the game. I like other ones for different reasons, but this one just like takes the cake for me, and it really sets up what you're in store for the rest of the game. So amazing bosses. Just I can't overstate that enough. Something I would like to emphasize for returning players that have played previous Fromsoftware games. The level scaling is a little bit different in this game. There's a very heavy emphasis on leveling your vigor early on, especially because once you get to the mid and late game areas, you're going to get like 2-shot or 3-shot very often. They kind of mixed up where the soft caps are and the hard caps are. Since it's such a massive game, you're going to be ending the game at an extremely high level. I think I ended the game at around level 170 or something like that. So it's a massive difference from previous games. So keep that in mind. The soft caps and hard caps for scalings like your vigor and your weapon scalings are a lot higher than previous titles. So to reiterate, you don't have to pump your damage stats as much as you think you do early on in the game. Just pump your vigor really high. I would say get it to like 40 as like a short-term goal, and then get it to 60 as the long-term goal, because that will help you out a lot in the long run. Or hey, maybe you're a masochist and you choose not to level your vigor, because that's another valid way of playing. You can make it as easy or hard on yourself as you want. And I think that's really the thing that I love the most about this game, the pure unrestricted freedom that the player has. And this is only possible because they designed such a great open world. I really do believe the open world aspect of Elden Ring will be the reason this game will get mainstream appeal across a wide audience, from the casual gamer to the poop sock gamers. And I love that because more people will finally see why myself and many others love this type of game. But yeah, I think that's really it. That's all I want to say about it in this video. I'm sure there are some things that I might have missed. I'm sorry it took so long to make this video and get it out, but I just couldn't put down this game. I love it so much. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Give it a like, maybe consider subscribing if you're not, but also leave a comment down below of who your favorite maiden is in this game, and I'll see you in the next video.